All righty. What's going on, everybody? Happy Thursday. I'm reporting live from Louisville in my hotel room. I'm at Code Palooza. Dan, where are you reporting live from?
Just my office here in beautiful Tampa Bay.
I love it. I haven't asked you in a bit. How's the weather in Tampa?
It's hot, it's humid, it's a little rainy. Today it's perfect, but we've got about 6, 7 more weeks of kind of the sweltering heat and
Boating
humidity,
weather.
and then we go to perfect weather from October through May.
I love it. I love it. Well, for those of you tuning in, hello, good morning. It is just us today. Hopefully Jake will join us. Jake's always in and out of meetings. So hopefully he joins us. But if he doesn't, that's okay because quite frankly, Dan and I can handle it. Dan and I are
Yeah,
big boys. We can handle it
yeah, love
ourselves.
Jake.
Dan, yeah. So this conversation is a conversation that I've spoken to with Guidance Counselor 2.0.
Hmm.
Dan and I've had countless conversations around brand building and the power of brand and community. But Dan, I want to dive in today just around community building and brand
Hmm.
building. And this can be from a sales perspective. This can be from, I'm really big on like empowering the job seeker to build their brand.
Yeah,
Talk about, I guess, in your words to kick it off. Let's start community because I think people are tired of hearing about brand, but I think they
right.
both obviously tie in. So let's talk about community. Why is building community so important? And then talk about what you've done with the Florida Gators podcast because that's pretty
Yeah.
notable.
Biggest reason for building community is so you can sell an NFT and get rich. I mean, it's very, very
There it
simple.
is. Welcome. Thank you. You have
Yeah,
unicorn
yeah,
behind
yeah,
us.
yeah. Thanks,
That's it.
thanks. We'll saved us 27 minutes. No, I think community is. I think a lot of times people get lost in the idea of internet community and what that means, right? Internet community doesn't mean that you have to be the next Gary Vee. It doesn't mean that you need to have 100,000 people subscribing to your Substack, right? Community means being, interconnected with people that have, similar interests or similar backgrounds or backgrounds and interests that you can learn from, right? It doesn't have to be, a million people. It can be as small as a few people that you can bounce ideas off of, share ideas, healthy debate and healthy conflict with those people. Going back to what we were able to do, I have another Florida Gators podcast, and it's a saturated lane. Everybody that follows sports wants to talk about sports, right? And the Florida Gators are obviously a big name school. And what we were able to do, and why I think that we found such success there, is that we carved out a niche of that community, right? Sports fans come in all shapes and colors, right? So shape, sizes, and colors. So what we decided to do is we wanted to create our lane to be a little bit more analytical, less facts and figures, a little bit more, barbershop or bar talk. What's the casual fan? What's the casual person going to talk about with their friends and family as it relates to the Florida Gators, right? So that was our goal, and that continues to be our goal. And every time that we have a guest or a former player on, the conversations stem around casual conversation that anybody can follow and listen to.
Right.
And because we haven't strayed from that, we've been able to build a really strong community of folks that beyond just our podcast and our blog and other things that we have a group of people that feel like they can hop into a Discord channel, or they can hop into our Twitter mentions, and be able to converse in a kind of a similar language with similar listeners, right? And we've been able to turn that into a six-figure business pretty quickly.
And then, and if people are sitting here, because I want to break it down more too, right? So
Yeah.
community, why should somebody from a professional perspective want to build community?
I think because you get access to information, you get access to ideas, you're able to bounce ideas off of. You're also be able to say, hey, who's had this problem before? What issues have you faced with this? And be able to troubleshoot together and become smarter and become better educated, get introduced to different thoughts, different concepts, and different ideas, right? I mean, I think, regardless of whatever community you build or you're a part of, you want it to be an area where you can have healthy conflict and healthy debate on issues. It shouldn't just be a lockstep, you know 100 people walking in one direction together. It's very much,
Right.
hey, how can we grow and nurture this to be more than just a group of Python developers in the Louisville area, right?
Yeah. And now, did you start the Florida Gators thing because you wanted to build community for your business, or is that more have that has that been an afterthought? Because, like, I mean, was it selfishly like, hey, listen, like, I want to use this as a sales tool? I mean, I've talked to some people last night,
Mhm.
at this conference in Louisville about the Power Podcast, and I think it's kind of the new. It's really just an excuse to have conversations, and it's the new way of
Yeah.
networking. Did you were like in your brain, it's like, I'm gonna start a Florida Gators podcast because I love Florida Gators, but also I
Mhm.
want to funnel it to business.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I've gotten some, business on this side of the house from it. I've gotten a lot of personal business out of it. I mean, we've been very fortunate. We have six great sponsors right now. We've probably cycled through another 10 over the last 3.5 years or 3.25 years. We've turned it into an actual business. So from that perspective, we created Stadium and Gale not knowing that it would be a business. We created Stadium and Gale because me and two other guys, former, UF player, and then another guy that we had, mutually connected with, said, hey, we're constantly talking about this. There's an opportunity where, we already had a decent following on Twitter, and you could say that that was our community before, to say, hey, let's get together, let's hash out some of these ideas that we're sharing over 160 characters and be able to expand on them. But we were very deliberate on what we did, and to say, hey, we're doing this for fun. We're doing this to be able to talk to former players or folks connected to the university,
Right.
and from there it grew. But my brand has always been, kind of multifaceted. I'll tell people that all the time, is like, I'm big into the Florida Gators, I'm big into my work in technology, I'm big into wine, and there's kind of different avenues and like product and innovation and stuff like that, and that's why we're doing this, right? And
Right.
I think what I love about the community that we've created here with Unicorn Finders is that it's never been about making money. It's been truly about sharing stories with other like-minded people that might be interested in hearing, similar stories. So, for me, the community of Unicorn Finders and watching, them interconnect and intertwine together, being able to root for their success and for them to be able to
Yeah.
root for each other's success, has been truly like even more gratifying than Stadium and Gale at times.
Yeah. And and you said something I want to dig in on, and I think this goes back to brand building as well. So you said 3.5 years of Stadium Gale so
Mm-hmm.
far.
Mm-hmm.
So, we've been at this thing really for 2.5 years. I mean,
Yeah.
when you started Stadium Gale, I mean, you didn't start out with a gazillion listeners. I mean, maybe you did, but, like, I mean, I'm sure you obviously had to
Well,
grow it.
we did. So what's funny is that the first episode we ever had, like, just took off. We
Oh,
actually
did
the
it
number
really?
two. Yeah, we're the number two sports podcast. Now, the thing is like having a short term success and long term sustained success, like, are very different, right? Because there could
Correct.
have been a lot of people that listened to it the first time and then be like, "Hey, this just isn't for me," and that's cool, right? There's probably a bunch of people that said, "Hey, this is the first episode. Let me check it out." Hey, that's not my lane, and it takes a little while for you to realize, like, that's okay, right? Like, you're not going to speak to everybody, and I think that that's an important part of community and building what that is deciding that if you're going to build a community or you're going to join a community, that not everybody's in it the same way you necessarily might be. It might not be,
Mhm.
there might be some deviating paths, and sometimes interests just change over time, right? But I think the important part about building community is being purposeful in what you're doing and what you want out of it, right? Knowing that it doesn't have to be the next, 100,000 person group on Facebook. It can be, a group of 30, 50, 100 people that you're in contact with, that you're learning and growing from. Because a lot of times with super large communities as well, as you can, lose the signal through the noise, right? You don't know, there's just too much going on and it's tough to keep up with. And I mean, people that follow Reddit and stuff like that, like, oftentimes complain about that. Like, hey, I'm really interested in this subject, but there's, 4,000 posts in this community today, right? So, like, maybe that's not for you, and maybe it is, right?
Yeah.
It really depends on who you are. But I think just going back to it, I mean, Ahmad Black, who we started with, was a football player. He had a reputation. My friend Corey had a, decent Twitter size following, and I had a decent size Twitter following. So we were able to have that, initial groundswell of support. But, like,
Sure.
starting a community and having, 10,000 people join your LinkedIn page doesn't mean that there's going to be sustained success there either. So you have to
Yeah.
continue to drive and push to bringing in people, and knowing that people, may leave, and it's probably not personal either.
No, not at all. And I think too, and I want to go into this topic, kind of pulling back, kind of more focused on unicorn founders and product, and
Yeah,
because our motto is really going after, and we're even kind of redefining, what we're going after.
yeah. I mean,
But I
we've
mean, we're all,
shifted 3 or 4
yeah,
times, right?
yeah, and I think the big thing to focus on though is, um, from a business perspective, why do you think businesses should be more focused now on building community? Because I'm seeing a shift with, obviously, and again,
Mhm.
I'm going to throw in the Web3 for a second. I think the
Yeah.
Web3 community does get it right in a sense that some are very focused on community, right? And
Mhm.
it helps them. So why do you think companies like a Vaco, or like a, not even Vaco, maybe a software company, should be focused on community building?
I mean, because there's so much more to a company and to ideas than just posting a job, than just posting, that you're on the Inc. 5000. Not a big deal. Vaco 16 years in a row. But I think what Vaco does, and what a lot of great companies are doing, and what a lot of great leaders are doing, is creating an ecosystem where similar minded people can interact together, where they can learn and grow, where they can develop, where they can, become more than just, a place where they can apply for a job, right?
Yeah,
There's so many great things happening out there that you just never know what that one piece or that one, you know, task that was accomplished might be able to help somebody else out, right?
right,
Connecting people that otherwise probably wouldn't be connected have created you know millions of relationships around the world, all
right,
because they shared some sort of similar interest, or some sort of commonality that they can learn and grow from. And I think people naturally like to learn, they like to develop, they like to know what's not just the latest and greatest, but hey, I'm dealing with this issue every single day, or this matter's coming up in my life every single day. How are you guys, dealing with that? What are great books? What are great websites? What are great
yeah,
tools? What isn't necessarily just backed by the largest, VC firms, or it has the biggest marketing budget that, has put their, Google SEO on the top if you search for a particular tool. But what are great, things out there that you may not otherwise have the time or energy to be able to find.
right. Yeah, and I think, and I don't know if this is a COVID thing. Dan, I'm definitely open to your opinion on this, but I feel like, and maybe I was naive to it beforehand, but I just feel like because the world's a little bit more global now than it ever has
Mhm.
been, there's more an emphasis on brand and community building, I think, coming out of COVID than there was going into COVID.
I would agree. I mean, I think people yearn for that, and I want to hear like your thoughts on this stuff too. I think people are yearning for personal connection. I think that people are yearning for the opportunity to learn from other people, right? I mean, I think of
Yeah.
Tampa as a pretty homogenous place in terms of like employment, right? Like a lot of companies here hired a bunch of people that were here. A lot of the technology stack kind of just lockstepped with, the larger companies, and then the mid-size, and then to the small. And now with COVID, and being able to attract talent and being able to attract eyeballs from all over the US and all over the world has allowed them the opportunity to potentially bring in new technology or bring in additional folks, right? But also like
Yeah.
in a remote workforce, in a remote world, like you may not be as actively involved in meetups or user groups, right? I mean, I don't know what they're like in Nashville, and I know you travel to a lot of other locations as well. Like user groups and meetups just aren't popping the way that they used to, right?
So
So
that's fascinating you
like
brought
now they're
that
finding
up.
it somewhere else, right? But now a meetup doesn't have to
Yeah.
be like I have to go to happy hour at 5 o'clock and then rush over to my son's baseball game, and now I can go and I can actively be a part of a Discord, or I can actively be a part of this group or these conversations maybe throughout the day, or maybe in a day that fits in. So I think we've shifted conversation to being able to happen like a little bit more over time, rather than just like
I'm
here's my
I-
business
I'm
card.
so glad you brought that up. So meetups, like, I think meetups are on their way out.
Yeah.
I don't know what you've seen in Tampa. Obviously, a lot of them got derailed because of COVID. Um, I know only really one or two. The two biggest meetups in Nashville are, I think, even struggling to stay consistent now, because I just think the push to the discords, the smaller scale, the smaller scale community building is has taken over. I think, everybody's in a discord. I'm in multiple discords. I'm sure you're in
Yeah.
multiple discords. And I think that has taken the place, and I've become fascinated with this too. And I've talked with people at Vaco about this. It's like, hey, like I think we need to be pushing conferences now. Like, the conference
Hmm.
circuit, has it gotten like hot? I wouldn't say it's gotten hot, but I would say there's more emphasis now on conferences than there ever has been, because I think the conferences are the new meetups, and then the discords are the new user groups.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love that idea and I love that concept. Obviously, you go to more conferences than I do, and that's something that is a goal for mine for 2023 is to do a little bit more of that. But um, I think the way that we communicate and I think that the way that we move forward, as society has become a lot more focused on Slack and Discord and these other channels of communication have changed kind of the impersonal piece of some of these meetups, right? Or some of these groups. I think that,
Hmm.
a lot of times there was, a number of people that were there for the right reasons, and then a lot of people that were there for the wrong reasons, whether it be to sell a service. I mean, I work in sales, right? Like I get it, right? But sometimes it can just be overwhelming and
Yeah.
you start to move away if like I go to a .NET user group and 30 people there are .NET developers and 70 people there are recruiters, salespeople, other folks that like maybe that's not my community. Maybe I'm very
Yeah.
happy in my job. Maybe I'm not looking, or maybe I want to learn about the new MVC framework or the new Angular, 15 or 16, whatever they might be on, right? So like
14. I,
I
I
think
learned yesterday they're on
uh,
14.
14, okay, perfect. You just never know, and there's not like a huge difference between like
Yeah.
9 and 14, but there's a difference between 5 and 9, and then like Angular JS to Angular 2 is like two different
A
languages. Anyway,
mess.
so but I think that you now you can be a little bit more purposeful in the groups that you're joining, right? Like there's so
Yeah.
many options, right? Now you can be a part of a .NET user group that's not just Tampa, right? Like you can be a .NET user group that's Florida or Southeast or United States or world, right?
Yeah.
That maybe wasn't there. Maybe you can Tampa Tampa's not huge into like big data, but maybe you're one of the folks that, was, big into big data. You had a job at, one of the bigger companies here, but there wasn't a huge presence. So now you can connect to those people. Right. So I think,
Yeah.
people are able to connect probably a little bit more purposefully with those groups and they're able to maybe derive value a little bit more. And that's why I do think that they're here to stay. I do think that there's going to be groups that come back and are able to thrive and be successful. But I think that the conference circuit where the content and the discussion is based around what you're actually interested in, not
Yeah.
just hoping and praying that
Yeah.
there's not like a Dell salesperson there trying to sell me the next EMC hardware.
Yeah, no, I love that. So how does and we'll kind of start to wrap it up here.
Yeah.
How does brand tie in with community, right? Because I know, so we've just wrapped on community now for 20 minutes, and if somebody's watching this, they're like, all right, I get it. Start something with your passions, right? Like for me,
Hmm.
I love wine as well. I was literally thinking
Yeah.
about doing wine and tech, like having
Ooh, I
five
love that.
people over to the house. There's actually there's a huge engineering community up where I live, in north of town. So having just five people over trying a bottle of wine for an hour and then leaving. Um, I'm obsessed with F1 sports now because of
Okay.
obviously the Drive to
Yeah. Drive to
Survive.
survive. Yeah.
Yeah, so good. And I've wanted to talk about it, right? So I'm thinking about doing a tech and F1. So community building is that. What is brand building, and I guess what is the difference between brand and community? And then
Yeah. Yeah. I
I'll
mean,
answer after you.
geez. So building your brand to me is so much more about like being able to communicate with folks that like may have similar interests, similar passions, similar goals, right? Like people aren't just like for the most part, like this one-sided individual or
Yeah, they're not
multifaceted,
one
right? So
dimensional.
like, right, yeah, one dimensional is the phrase I was looking for, right? So like even if you're in tech, you probably have other interests, right? Like even if you like wine, you're probably into something else, right? So
Sure.
there's a lot of different, facets to individuals and different dimensions to folks. And I think what happens is that, whenever people talk about brand and they talk about building community, it's always about how can you scale your brand and how can you scale your community. And I think that that's wrong. It shouldn't be about growing and scaling. It should be about finding your lane and finding the folks that are going to be a part of that, right?
Right.
There's a lot of different books about creating your community, whether that's you know five like-minded people that have a Discord, have a group chat about a conversation that may grow, it may not, but like for me, community and brand is 100% about being able to maximize your interest in multiple different things, being able to connect with people that go back to it, challenge you, that engage in healthy conflict and healthy debate for you all to be able to learn and grow from, right? Like to me, that's what a
Yeah.
community is. It's a place where you can go and you can foster and nurture, your shared interests and your shared commonalities. So it goes back to branding. Who are you? What do you want to be? What's the world that you're trying to drive into, right? Like if you talk about product, there's 1,000 different aspects of product, and maybe one of
Right.
your biggest things is go to market of web applications. Cool, there's probably a
Right.
huge sector that you can go and speak to, and maybe it's finding somebody that is interested in consumer good go to market, right? Like
Right.
now you're talking about driving into these lanes where there's likely other people that you can bounce ideas off of and learn and nurture from, right? But to me, brand is all about building out, hey, I am a multi-dimension person. I am more than just what meets the paper, and here's
Yeah.
information that I'm giving to you to hope that you can in turn in our community share information and grow from.
Yeah, I think brand, I mean, pretty simple in my mind is literally just your online reputation,
Yeah, and
right?
you control it.
And yeah, yeah, 100%. You control your brand, right? I mean, literally, like Dan, when you say, "Hey, what do you think of when you think of Dan Thompson?" I think of executive IT leadership. I think of
Mhm.
wine. I think of Florida Gators and boats,
Yeah,
right? So again, what is your
pretty
online
simple guy.
reputation? Yeah, exactly. So all right, this is good. This is good shit. Thanks, Dan, for hanging out with me. Sorry that we didn't have our third amigo on today, but we're back next week. We're actually next week we're having a follow up with Vera and Reach. So
Let's go.
Paysol and those guys, we had a great conversation with them a few weeks ago. We're having them back on kind of for a follow up because there's just so much happening and so much to talk about. So we'll be back next week. And Dan, hope you have a great week, buddy.
You too, brother. Enjoy Louisville.
Yeah. See y'all.